and gentlemen, and welcome to the Q Files. It's the 7th of January. Again, the year is 2004, at least that's what we all are going by. Tonight we're going to talk about some big numbers, trillions and quadrillions, and I think you're going to be amazed by how much intervention is going on in the world's financial system to keep the good ship lollipop afloat. Now, I don't know if you're even able to count to the numbers of a billion, trillion, quadrillion, quintillion, and go on from there. But if you want to go to my website, stevequayle.com, and click on the Money Matters, at the very top of the Money Matters, there's a whole section that I'll be kind of referencing and giving you illustrations from tonight on how much money, truly, $1 trillion is. Now, ladies and gentlemen, never in the history of this nation or any other nation has a country burned through so much cash, not manufacturing out of capital the money or out of savings, but just printing their way into oblivion. So I want to, get to some of the biggest news out there, and it all centers around money tonight. But before I do, I want you to know that I received a call from somebody who's in charge of FedEx security at a major airport. This was given to me almost, let's say, 15 minutes ago as I was preparing for the show. He said, Steve, all FedEx planes have gone on super heightened alert against hijackings and against, listen to this, you guys, armed assault against aircraft. So this was given to me just moments ago. It came in from the East Coast. I won't even tell you where. I've got to protect these people that give this kind of information. And I said to my friend, I said, what is your take on this? He said, boy, we've not seen this before. Now, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that absolutely makes me, how should I say this, want to find another brick wall sometimes, and that's, when you beat your head on one and move to the next one, and when you finally run out of 4 walls, the only thing you've got left is the floor, and then if you get a step ladder, the ceiling, then you got to look for a new room. Well, the thing that is strident and just how do I say this? Sometimes I'm cynical, and I apologize to that, but there's no way to deal with the mass mind control outside of cynicism sometimes, obviously through prayer and through calling on the living God. But being human, I find out that my drawbacks in that realm sometimes come to the forefront really quick. The thing that is I'm referring to tonight is, are they going to raise the level? Are they going to lower the terror alert level? Now, somebody sent me an email saying, don't you think, Steve, that when these guys strike, they'll strike when everybody's basically got the cots asleep at the switch or napping? And they said, wouldn't it be in your mind when everything was low, meaning all the alerts were low? Well, that could be, and that's a very good thought, by the way. But I want to share something with you. I just got an email from Doug Hagman, because a lot of people give Doug a lot of garbage. I know they give me a lot of garbage. But let me read this to you, because it's the head of the Air Marshal Service Operations Center. In other words, the guys that are in charge of putting people on aircraft to make sure you get to where you're going and the flights get to where they're going. He said, Mr. Hagman, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you and the analysts for the work you put into your site. I use this site daily in my duties at the Air Marshal Service Operations Center. I have found that your site provides up-to-date, factual commentary and analysis rather than the blathering drivel common to commercial media news organizations. In this age of increased operations, inter-service rivalries are still present, and information is jealously guarded to assure continued future budgets through operational fiats by the agency with the information. In other words, he's saying Agency A won't share it with Agency B, because then they don't get their funding next year based on all the good stuff they came up with this year. He said this, I wish I could sign my name to this post, but due to the government policies, I must remain anonymous. And he signed it blank Federal Air Marshal. Now, ladies and gentlemen, and please understand why I'm trying to say this to you. I take this stuff serious. I hope you do. But I'm the one that coined the word, and again, I'm going to have a new section on my website, really good, by Holly and I have been talking about. We're going to put up Q statements. But my definition of the mass media, and this is the kindest thing I can say about it, is they're vomit brokers. they, how should I say this, excel at regurgitation. And so not only are these guys happy enough to have a fresh pile of vomit, but then everybody's got to add a few colors to it, you know, kind of paint by numbers. And this is going to be really gross. I'm sorry. Anybody eating, you may want to skip this part. But the manipulation of the vomit, you know, they'll perfume the vomit. They will change the color of the vomit. Well, when it's all said and done, it's vomit. It's even beyond mushroom food. So, again, I want you to know that the people out there that we hear from daily, Doug and I, these are people, and there are some fabulous people out there that are fully aware of who's behind the terrorism. I'm not talking about the average, you know, scapegoats, and they're doing their best to make sure that the maximum amount of life can be saved. And, again, that's all I can do. I'd like to think that, you know, since I realize that the good ship Lollipop is going down, just like the Titanic, I, for one, want to shut the band up and get people into their life rafts and lifeboats ahead of time. So, again, I want you to know that I share this with you for your benefit to, so you understand. We just don't sit around, you know, what would I say, drinking tequila, coming up with this stuff. I don't drink it, neither does Doug, by the way. I'm just saying whoopee, but, you know, it's not the tequila influence. Although there have been times. But listen, tonight I want to talk about just the sheer financial manipulation that's gone on in the Japanese market. It was once stated that Sony stood for Standard Oil of New York. And if you look at the history of Sony, Sony was one of the biggest, most profitable, and still is, corporations in the world. After World War II, big money moved into Japan, and with the Japanese work ethic and some very, very brilliant individuals, after all, we fought them in World War II and knew what they were capable of. The big mega corporations like Sony and Matsushita, and then following everything from Honda, Toyota, Kawasaki, I mean the biggest of the big, they came on the scene in an incredible manner. When the Nikkei Dow, the Japanese stock market, was at 36,000, there was so much money flowing in Japan that people were absolutely ordering drinks with gold dust in them. And I'm talking real gold dust. I'm not talking, you know, gold plating or gold foil. Then, like any excessive society that has so much money they don't know what to do, if you can believe this, the city of Tokyo was valued at more than the entire real estate in the United States of America. So you knew something had to give. Now, I'm going to talk to you about the intervention this week of 3 trillion, Trillion, yen. Listen to this. It's from Reuters. Japan, worried that a strong yen could hurt an export-led recovery in its economy, spent about 3 trillion yen, $28.3 billion US dollars, in the first 2 days this week to hold the currency down, a market source said on Wednesday. That figure compares with some 20 trillion yen, or 188 billion, spent on yen-selling currencies market intervention the whole of 2003. So, just looking at that, everyone, it's amazing that they spent in 2 days what they normally would have spent in 2 months. The source of the Bank of Japan, acting on behalf of the Ministry of Finance, sold about 2.6 trillion yen on Monday. Despite the massive intervention, the dollar-Japanese yen ratio hit a 3-year low of 106 yen later that day. About 400 billion yen was spent on Tuesday when the dollar touched a low of 106.09 yen, according to sources. In late Tokyo trade on Wednesday, the dollar was holding just above the level at around 106.20 yen. The Japanese authorities are thought by some analysts to be desperate to prevent the dollar from falling below 105 yen, since that would trigger heavy option-related selling of the U.S. unit. But traders say it's excuse me. I'm sorry, but traders say it's only a matter of time before the yen breaks 106. In a move to secure more interventions, the Ministry of Finance announced last month that it would raise the borrowing limit on its currency intervention account to 140 trillion yen in the fiscal year starting next April from 79 trillion yen. As a stopgap measure to avoid a funding crunch before Parliament approves the raising of the borrowing limit, the ministry has arranged a repo deal with the Bank of Japan in which can get funds by selling foreign bonds to central bank and buying the paper back at a later date. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me just give you how much a trillion is, and this is on my website. If you were to take a trillion pennies, okay, and a trillion, again, is 1,000 billion, you would have a cube that's 273 feet by 273 feet by 273 feet of pennies. The total weight of those pennies would be, you ready for this? This is an amazing number, 3,125,000 tons. If you stack the pennies on top of each other, they would go to the moon. No pun intended. Actually, 986,426 miles. If you laid the pennies flat, touching each penny, they'd cover an area of about 90,000 acres. Now, understand just what the Bank of Japan did. You'd have to multiply this by 3 to get a feel. Now, just imagine, if you will, that obviously you can change the amount of zeros on whatever currency, and it's going to be an amazing event. Now, hey, Steve, could you check all the streams? I'm getting massive, like 10 or 12 emails coming in right now that there are no streams up.
Steve,
is that, yeah.
There was a burp. It's back up. There was a short burp, but it's okay now.
Okie doke. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if we start to talk about trillions and trillions of dollars, if you take the entire value of the United States, everything you and I earn and everything we own, let me say this, that the gross domestic product right now is about around $10 trillion. I saw recently where they valued all of Britain's real estate holdings, et cetera, in $10 trillion. So what I've noticed, and I think I did a whole show on this way back in the hidden past, I believe that it was the plan of the international financiers, and still is, to get a massive world and global default almost concurrently. That's what the New World Order boys will need to issue their ultimatum. Can you imagine everybody going broke almost simultaneously and concurrently, at least in the world of paper, money, and paper assets? If you understood who owns all your mortgages and my mortgages, our mortgages, I think we'd all basically be real, how should I say this, upset, because in essence, everything that we have value on, the level of debt against it is anywhere from 3 to 10 to 1, not counting derivatives. Now, the derivative market, which are financial instruments, or basically IOUs in the computerized matrix worlds of international offset of liability, are somewhere in the $250 to $300 trillion, or a quarter of a quadrillion dollars. Now, somebody said, well, you're talking real money. Well, yes, we are, and I've got to share with you that this is a unique, unparalleled, not only set of numbers, but set of circumstances. So as we come to understanding how much of this stuff is manipulated, it becomes obvious that we're talking numbers that simply, how do I say this, people can't relate to. It's tough to relate to trillions when a $50 bill makes the difference between groceries this week or groceries not, meaning no groceries. So, well, you and I stay focused so much on the vomit that we're presented day in and day out in the mainstream magazines, newspapers, blah, blah, blah. You've got to understand that the real movers and shakers do recognize what's going on, and that's why, again, we're trying to get everyone up to speed on, look, we can't compete with the big guys, and it's just really, really amazing we can follow them. Let's see this. Okay, thank you, Bart. I'll read that afterwards. And by the way, I'm taking wellness formula. Somebody sent me a suggestion for some cough medicine. If you would see my office, which is normally a mess, I got herbal stuff. I mean, I'm not kidding you. I expect to see tree branches out my ears. And I thank those of you who are praying for me. This has been a really rough time. And by the way, we have been sprayed. Before I and everybody else I knew came down with this, We were sprayed in Bozeman beyond anything. And look, I have thousands of photographs that people have sent me from around the country, literally, in a giant plastic container. And I've got, all the photographs I've taken. So when I say it's beyond what I've ever seen, I've seen it all. And I'm not talking about today, but it's really amazing to me just how many people got sick in the current spraying, and again, reporting in from all over the country. As you know, when your body fights off any infection, your immune system gets keyed up, and so I'm convinced that what they do is they spray, and then they wait for all the reports to come in from the hospitals to see how effective they are. Like I said, I don't know if it's political correctness killed us, which will be on our obituary, or basically just how they were too dumb to live. Maybe that's a better statement. It's kind of amazing to me that more people haven't put two and two together, as if we don't have enough stuff to worry about in a given day. Now, Dave sent me this email last night, and it was too late for me to deal with it, but I want to deal with it first off the part of the show tonight. He says this: when you advise that gold will go up, $50 a silver will explode when the powers that be pull the plug and the dollar is sold, we should see the Dow crash. That's what you'd normally think, but not necessarily. The reason why you won't see that, Dave, is due to the massive, at the first sign of a worldwide liquidity crisis, the Fed, meaning the Federal Reserve, has plans, and they'll do it through to sustain the dollar at all costs and to keep the market up. Is there a place where it will panic? Absolutely. But at first, ladies and gentlemen, you can see $50 moves, and you can see 50 cent to $1 moves in silver in one move, and the stock market can go up. It's like the other day when gold went up, the stocks went up 125 points. Now, here's what he says: what do you expect and therefore recommend if one holds non-hedged gold and silver shares? Jim Sinclair recommends holding certificates, but will that be enough? Well, first of all, I agree with Jim Sinclair, and it's fascinating. I called in Bozeman, Montana, the big brokers. You got them in your town, I got them in my town. Only one of them would let you take your stock certificates, and in order to do so, you have to pay them $200. I said, why is that? You ready for this one? Administration fees. But he says this, Dave says, will the gold and silver shares crash as well? No. But again, you've got to have them, because what happens when a brokerage firm buys stock, let's say they buy 1 million shares of American Barrick, and American Barrick is, $50 a share for, this is just an illustration, and they hold $50 million worth of American Barrick stock. And let's say somebody says, well, we want to go out and we want to hedge that, and we believe Barrick's going to 60. We want to buy another $200 million worth of Barrick stock, or 4-to-1. They take the pool of stock and they hedge it, and they basically speculate with it. So unless you have the physical shares of stock in your hand, you could literally be smiling one second and crying the next, because if XYZ firm that held your stock goes broke, you've got to jump through some major hoops to get your stock. You've got to verify, and then you've got to understand that the security insurance fund now will only cover, I believe it's moved down to $500,000 of all your stock, because, ladies and gentlemen, a stealth maneuver of horrendous financial Armageddon proportions took place a couple of weeks ago. The people that cover stock portfolios against the sort of thing I'm talking to you about, another thing, basically put a limit, a ceiling of $500,000. Now, that's a lot of money to some people, but to other people, that's pocket change. So I would say this, to me, that was a sheer indication that they're anticipating the meltdown of a lot of brokerage firms. So, let that be your heads up to really get with it. And so I hope I've answered your questions. Here's what I'm telling everybody. Paper, and again, let me share with you. I've got 3 very intelligent women that have made, I would say, intuitive and intelligent decisions to buy the metals when they were much lower. And the 3 ladies, and by the way, I'm not picking on you men, But the three ladies have done fantastic. They've got to be cumulatively up at least 30%, if not higher. That's not bad in a couple months. And that's at real pricing. So I noticed one thing about all of them. They had paper, but independently, they said, well, we were woken up, we have an uneasy feeling, and they moved. And, this is what I'm trying to tell everyone. You've got to basically pull up your bootstraps, pull up your suspenders if you wear them, or gird yourself up. There's a good biblical term. And you've got to have the ability to say, look, I'm going to do this. I am going to do this. I'm going to get out of harm's way. Does it not scare, and I'd like to hear some emails or see some emails, I'd like to read them on the air so everyone can hear them, of what you guys think of, and here's what I'd like. I'd like somebody who's got everything they pretty much own invested, and how you sleep, and I'm not picking on you, I just want to know how you can sleep at night knowing that your whole future, how do I say this, is pretty much in difficult and perilous times. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because I have talked to different people, and they say, well, I'm just rolling the dice. Well, I say, listen, wouldn't you rather have it come up 7 than snake eyes? So what I'm trying to encourage everyone, is to look at the numbers, whether the Bank of Japan is intervening, or we're going $16 billion a day some days, where the Federal Reserve is supporting the U.S. market. I mean, these are horrendously huge numbers. And again, understand that the globalists know that they have to crash the world in order to bring about a world currency and a world change. How close are we to that? I don't know. But very, very soon, we're all going to know. I'll do this, Walter, when we come back from the break. Walter says, please, just a few words about the safe room filter you have on your website. Thank you. I can tell you this, Joel Skousen, Holly, listened to him. I didn't last night. Joel is one of the smartest men I don't agree with him. He doesn't agree with me on everything, but he's a very, very smart man. His grandfather, Cleon Skousen, wrote, The Naked Capitalist or The Naked Communist. I think he wrote both. And the thing is that Joel was on George Norrie, I believe, last night, talking about just how close we are to a total nuclear decimation, annihilation of the United States. And he blamed, and it's interesting, it was deja vu when Holly told me this, he blamed Russia and China as being behind it, instigating it. Now listen, both Russia and China hold enough U.S. dollars that if they decided to sell the dollar immediately, they could pull it off. They could do it in such a way, too, that it could be based on some kind of an altered incident in the world markets, and they could pull this off to the point where there would be mayhem and chaos in this country. And before they attack, they want, and listen, I've read enough Soviet war plans and documents, and Jeff Nyquist and others have told you about this for a decade. Joel Skousen talks to you about this, but the Soviet war policy is in full effect, everyone. Glasnost, perestroika, and the meltdown of, or the breakdown or takedown of the Berlin Wall, that was all for outward consumption. And now they've been able to do, by what I would call treason within our government and financial promiscuity within our Treasury officials, to totally bring us into a place of dependence on them to support our currency. Now, sure, we can go martial law, we can go to all the different executive orders in place, but there's never been a time that we can say that we're experiencing the threat level that we're at right now in the economic arena. So it's really important. Steve Melching, my producer, just sent me this. Read a new article on rents about Yellowstone. That's the Idaho Observer. What that Idaho Observer article was a lot of mismatch of everything that went out falsely this summer. For the record, ladies and gentlemen, Wyoming and Grand Teton Park is south of the south entrance of Yellowstone, and they had 3 earthquakes, and they had a 5.0 and a couple of 4.0s in pretty close succession. So immediately, people went out and said, oh, Yellowstone's getting ready to blow, and of course, it'll kill everything within 600 miles, blah, blah, blah. Again, understand, I'm in Bozeman. I am 80 miles north of Yellowstone. I know so many people. I have photographed that, and it's not again what I know, it's who I know. And the thing is I'm just telling you point blank that this is nothing at this point to be concerned with. Somebody sent me an email, one of my listeners, saying, well, don't you think this is more important than terrorism? No, because it's not the same issue right now. Do I believe the supervolcano will go off someday? Sure. Do I believe it could be helped along with the correct planting of nuclear weapons in the correct areas? Probably. But at this point, everyone, this is just, again, the Idaho Observer is just rehashing a bunch of what I call nonsense stuff. For instance, in that article they were talking about it smells like sulfur. You cannot get away from the smell of sulfur. Trees are dead around the hot pots. Well, that's what makes Yellowstone so unique, since it has 60% of the world's hydrothermal features. And so what I'm saying to you is the only thing going on in Yellowstone is one pompous rear end of a federal judge shut Yellowstone down to snowmobilers and snow coaches, thereby destroying an entire community's livelihood. Thousands of people come to West Yellowstone. Actually, West Yellowstone, Montana, is considered the snow capital I think at one point it was considered the snowmobile capital of the world. And now, because of a pompous rear-end judge who even went over the president's authority, we have no snowmobiles going into Yellowstone unless you go in, I think, in caravans of 8 or 10 escorted by an official guide. And I can share this with you. The animals range outside the park, inside the park. I've snowmobiled in Yellowstone where you can come up on a buffalo and be literally 6 inches away from its butt and just pass them, or, elk along 5 feet away from you. So, the deal is, oh, it's scaring animals. No. What it is the BS, crap-headed environmentalists, again, just, how should I say this, working their best. It's not enough to kill access to the park or the national park. They've got to destroy the surrounding communities. So that's the only thing going on in Yellowstone that's explosive at this minute. So I just wanted to address that and tell you, again, much more stuff to worry about at this point than that. And I think it's important for you all to just see the nature the nature of the information that comes out to take your minds away from what I would say are the pressing and relevant issues. Now, let me read you a couple more thoughts, and I'll talk about the filter after the break. Listen to this. This is on Bill Bonner, Gary North, The Daily Reckoning, and how to identify a bubble. And this is a fabulous overview. It's on our website. They say, what will happen in 2004? Well, we won't even try to tell you. The best we can do is try to figure out what ought to happen. And even then, we're appalled by our own arrogance. We cannot know what the gods intend. All we can do is try to make out dimly the right and wrong of it. We begin today's remarks with a disturbing question. Now listen to this. Ask yourself this. Why should an American earn 10 times as much as a Chinese laborer? Does he work that much harder? Is he so much smarter? Does he have some unseen virtue blessed by the gods with extra spending power? He earns more only because his parents and grandparents and great-grandparents worked hard